Keo.
Boardman, you okay?
Yes, we've had some technological issues, but they are resolved now. So
Excellent.
it's going to be another amazing Mondeo Law episode. Have you prepared something for us?
I have. Although, right, this is ironic. As we were waiting for your technological problems to resolve,
yeah,
I've just looked at my tablet and it started updating itself.
Oh my god!
So, but it's sort of finished the updating process now and it's coming back on. So I'm going to see if it's kept all of my windows open that I had open.
Oh.
Yeah, I didn't even say it could do it. It just did it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
When they do that, it's just like idiots.
Yeah.
I've made some handwritten notes though as well, so hopefully we'll be able to wing it. And none of our listeners will know that I've got these issues, but it should be all right. Really.
Wing it is pretty much your motto, isn't it? I would.
Pretty much. Yeah.
I'd love to go to court one day and watch you just wing it. You're on my iPad. My Tesco iPad, own brand iPad, is just updating.
It's always embarrassing, right? It has happened to me before when my laptop's just decided to lock itself down as I'm trying to refer to some legislation, and then the judge goes, "It's okay, Mr. K, I found it myself." It doesn't really help you feel particularly professional, So.
No, I can well imagine. So what's the topic today? Because there's been one topic dominating the news all week. Is it that?
Yeah. Yes. So we're going to talk about broadly the RNLI, and obviously there have been various arseholes have suggested that the RNLI shouldn't rescue migrants at sea.
Yeah. Who first started it? Do you know? Because
I'm not sure, because to be fair, it came around. It comes up occasionally. This is not like a brand new thing. It just got a lot of traction, didn't it, over the last week or so for some reason.
Yeah, because it has come up when we've done Asylum before about like what should the Navy be doing, for instance, in the English Channel when they're patrolling it. Should they be shooting dinghies out of the sea full of women and children, or not?
Yeah. And obviously no to that one. But, they shouldn't be doing that at all. So I think it got most traction when Farage said something about it, didn't he, on GB News? Although I thought they didn't have any viewers, GB News, but clearly they have some.
Well, they have journalists, don't they? They say they've got 100 viewers. 98 of them are journalists waiting for someone to say something controversial.
All right, and then they just amplify it on Twitter, basically, for them.
It's a really good. Because
it's a good business model, isn't it? Like,
it's a great model. It is a great model. You know what it's like production value-wise and TV-wise? It looks, the bits I've seen, which have only been on Twitter, because I don't even know how you would get it. I don't know if you have to get it on the internet or if it's actually on TV. Do you remember Babe Station and those kind of... They appeared about 20 years ago on TV. And it's basically one steady cam. So one very basic camera with some sound, which is not even the main issue, and then it would just be like a babe, like wiggling about on a blanket or something.
Yeah,
you could say,
phone in exorbitant cost.
phone in, and you can imagine like night watchmen all over the country were like, well, they've not said I can't use the telephone. It's 40p a minute. It's not my 40p.
They phoned into those things, and what did they expect to get out of it? I always wonder.
That's pretty obvious what they get out of it, innit? But
I don't know. It's like, do they phone up expecting that? Oh, if I strike a rapport with this woman, then maybe we'll go to dinner together or something. You know what I mean?
Absolutely not. What is going on in your head? Absolutely not. They don't phone up to strike a rapport. They phone up to... You know why they phone up? To be honest, that phone call probably won't ever last more than 2 or 3 minutes. But that's the model, isn't it? Where it's really cheap TV to make. There's not high production values. There's not high cost. Now, whereas the Babes made the money with the people phoning the 0898, I say the Babes made the money. The Babes probably did not make that much money. It was whoever owned it, which would be porn barons, would be my guess. Which is quite a good title, really. Do you know what I mean? If you're going to be, if it goes to the New Year's honours list and you could be like, and get an OBE or an MBE or be knighted, maybe you get the option. I'd be like, yes, can I be a porn baron? That sounds awesome. I wonder if there's like other. Do you get like, I don't know, jizz earls or lady smut? I don't know. So good idea, but petered out. So GB News seem to like do that, but then they don't really spend any money on publicity because all the journalists and Twitter just does it for them. So they probably get more coverage than something like Sky. They've got more advertising, free advertising. It's a brilliant model. So was it? Oh, yeah. Did Farage do this on his pint, making a pint or something? Because there's like a really bad pun where he has a guest on and they have a pint of beer, which sounds like an idea we've had over the past. We should do this whilst getting drunk, and it's called Making a Pint or something like that. And he has someone on and they both have to have a pint of beer because that's Farage's thing, isn't it? He likes a pint of beer.
Well, yeah, because he's the common man, isn't he? You know what I mean? That's the whole thing.
That's I always wear an immaculately tailored Savile Row handmade suit whilst drinking a pint of beer in the TV studio, whilst talking to my working class chums about why the RNLI shouldn't be saving lives at sea. It's quite a bold. I mean, it's a brilliant comedy character. Every time I see him, I think, like, if Stuart Lee had done this, they'd be thinking he was an absolute genius. Or if Coogan was Farage, which he might still be, we don't know.
Exactly, he might reveal the mascot at the end of Scooby-Doo at some point, might he? Yeah.
It was Coogan, oh my God. But so he said something then. So it's Farage. We think he's the one that's made it a big story, and it's basically that the RNLI should they be checking people's passport before they let them aboard and rescue them from certain death.
Well, yeah, exactly. I mean, that's the thing is they've referred to the RNLI. Because not just Farage, various other sort of right-wing grifters on social media have referred to the RNLI acting as, I think the term was a taxi service for migrants. Okay. And this is an argument that's been used loads of times, particularly over the years, particularly in the last sort of 5 to 10 years with an increase in migration from Africa across the Mediterranean. It was certainly used in the Mediterranean to say that people, these search and rescue operations that go on, that they effectively acted as a lure to, or facilitated crossings because, why wouldn't you just get in a dinghy with 900 other people, or however many it is, if you know that you're going to be saved when your dinghy inevitably sinks, which ignores the fact that several hundred people die every year doing that, and makes no sense at all because it's similar to. Well, why wouldn't you set your house on fire if you know you're going to be rescued by the fire brigade? You know, it's like it doesn't. People don't put themselves in positions of harm thinking that they're going to be rescued. You know what I mean? So it's
no, I know, especially a free service. Of that. Yeah, because it's like it's not a paid for thing, is it? It's the RNLI is a charity anyway, but even firemen and stuff, it's too big a risk.
Yeah, exactly.
Too big a risk.
Yeah, it's not 100% successful, is it? Every sort of rescue operation. So
no.
It doesn't. It's a sort of an argument that appeals to people that have already decided that they don't want immigrants coming into the country.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Because and it allows them to say that in a way that sounds, that it's not, it just sort of confirms their worldview, doesn't it? It's similar to the argument that, well, what I'm more concerned about is it just encourages people trafficking, and it's the people trafficking and the people smugglers that are the problem, blah, blah, blah. And literally, because the government uses this argument as well, and they say what the RNLI do is that they effectively help people smuggling go on. They don't deter people smugglers from doing it, and it's nonsense because, like I said, that argument it just allows people to sort of frame their racism in borderline legalistic, wording, And it's just a ridiculous argument. So the RNLI have had to come out, haven't they, and issue statements to sort of say that, look, we have a moral and legal obligation to actually save people at sea, and we're not going to be checking people's passports or finding out what their legal status is before we do that. And so I thought we'd have a look at what is the legal obligation for rescue at sea, basically.
Okay, that's good.
And where does it derive from, and so on and so forth.
So here's a question before we start, because I was thinking about this the other day when all this broke. I was driving to a gig, and I was thinking of who are the bravest. Basically, it'd be like a bravery top 5. So if you were to think about jobs like that people do, who are the bravest? And so soldiers can be really, really brave, can't they? Not necessarily all the time, but there can be like horrible circumstances they're in where they're trapped behind enemy lines and they've got to fight their way out and stuff like that. So they are like top level brave. Firemen, I think you could definitely be argued that firemen are braver because
they've not got a gun for one thing,
so you've got a gun and you've got a chance to shoot other people who have guns, and not include, if you're a soldier, not including like the possibility of drone strikes and airstrikes or whatever. So you've got a fighting chance, whereas I suppose you could say that a fireman has got water and foam to try and combat fire. I'll be honest, I would rather face another soldier than fire, because I think fire's pretty top level. But then again, you go, right, well, firemen do have breathing apparatus, and they do, and obviously that's as high a level as it gets. Our lifeboat men, who firstly are volunteers, so they're not really getting paid for it, and because I met a few, because my dad's funeral was in Fleetwood, and he's like family with fishermen, and so he wanted, the RNLI did his funeral service basically. It wasn't like a religious thing. So we met loads of them. Some of whom worked on ferries, all of whom had fishing boats, and all of whom were like lifelong sea people, but all of which as well just looked like massive, really normal fellas, some of whom were in the 20s, some of whom were up to about 50 odd. And we watched them train. It was like about November time when they did the funeral. So they did it as part of the training exercise. And even then, the sea was not particularly rough. And all of us just stood there freezing as the wind's blowing our face, and just going, these people are... Can you imagine how bad this sea gets? If you're a trawlerman and you've spent all your time at sea and you can't handle it, and then these are coming out, yes, they've got a £2 million boat and it's phenomenal, but they're still going out. And I just wonder, they are at least as brave as firemen, I would put it, at least as. So
definitely, and the volunteers as well, aren't they? They're doing
that's the thing.
Out of some like moral obligation, which which I think makes them braver. You know what I mean? Like they're not doing it. Like lots of people, I'm not under, in any way sort of denigrating people who work as firemen or work as soldiers. But sometimes people sort of get into that line of work because I'll do that for a bit. You know what I mean? Like
maybe, maybe. I don't know about firemen. I wanted to be a fireman when I was younger.
It's quite hard to get into the fire service.
Yeah,
I think. You have to.
I've always loved firemen.
It's a fitness test, don't you? So.
Yeah, but I don't know. They're just like a totally different breed, and it's kind of that thing that you don't really understand, because you need to live firstly by the coast, which is very different than living in a town, and you also like need to be. They're all in fishing places mainly, or holiday places, but they go out and rescue people who are professional fishermen who are also brave and stupid, absolutely. Oh, it's a 4-10 gale, right? I need to get some mackerel. Who cares? Bang, let's go out and get it. So it's just interesting that the government have found themselves on the wrong side of... They've basically taken on the RNLI now.
In the latest target in the culture war after
Rashford.
The nurses, the England football team.
Doctors.
Who next? The RNLI. Let's have a go at them.
Doctors, teachers.
Before they haven't got all the things that are actually good about British society. That seems
they're opposed to them. They're opposed to them. But then they do, they do champion the little guy, like some sort of property tycoon who's been given a load of free land. They're on his side, and they'll prove till the cows come home that he did nothing illegal.
Yeah.
But the RNLI...
Will someone please think of the corporate landlords, you know?
So, right, what is the legality then of being... Because my thought would be, my guess would be that they don't have any legal obligation if they are in it. Because they're a charity, so they're not charging anybody. So there's no real contract. Do they owe anybody a duty of care? Well, not really, because the sea's like 2/3 of the planet. So how on earth can you possibly, like, actually legislate that? Do you know what I mean? Because it's so big. You say, oh, if somebody's 100 metres from shore, you've got to save them. When it gets to 300, oh, it might be a bit risky out there. So, it's, you know, there's too many variables, surely. So I would have thought they can't be, you know, there must be like a basic something, but surely it's not law, or is it?
Well, no. There is law. There is international maritime law, basically, which governs the high seas and applies in all maritime zones as well. So
straight away,
which basically.
Maritime is an old-fashioned word, and then we're into the high seas. So we've instantly gone 300 years back in time, and I love it.
Yeah. Well, and actually, that is very true, because like most of the laws effectively were, you know, almost like conventions from, you know, or conventions with a small c, as it were, you know.
Yeah.
And it was, you know, that sort of like gentlemanly behaviour and what was expected of people at sea.
Elizabeth I, Francis Drake, that lot.
All them lot. Yeah. And obviously they did a bit of privateering as well and stuff like that. So it's not, they weren't all good guys. But
no, I think history proves none of them were particularly good guys.
No, exactly. But you know, there was effectively a code amongst sort of seafaring types about sort of rescuing people in distress and stuff like and so on. So. But that has now been codified into international treaties and conventions to effectively make it, you know, official, basically. So in 1982, came into force, or rather, there was the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea, which in essence codified much of the existing laws and ideals and codes, in essence, of practice, and specifically for our purposes, at Article 98 of what is called UNCLOS, the United Nations Convention on Law of the Sea, it provides that every state, so that's every state who's a signatory to this convention, which is, I think it's 160 odd states, so like most seafaring states, basically. Every state shall require the master of a ship flying its flag, insofar as he can do so without serious danger to the ship, the crew, or the passengers, A, to render assistance to any person found at sea in danger of being lost, B, to proceed with all possible speed to the rescue of persons in distress, if informed of their need of assistance insofar as such action may reasonably be expected of him, and C, after a collision, to render assistance to the other ship, its crew and its passengers, and where possible to inform the other ship of the name of his own ship, its port of registry, and nearest port at which it will call. So the first point there is to render assistance to any person found at sea in danger of being lost. Now that's a legal duty, basically, on any master of a ship.
Right.
It requires the state to so by signing up to the convention, it imposes a duty on the master of the ship. So even though it's worded that every state shall require, so what the RNLI are talking about is that when they go out on a boat, one of their, you know, there's as I understand, there's a command structure on a boat, and there'll be a master of that boat.
Captain, surely. Must be captain. Must be.
Yeah. Whoever's in charge of that boat is under a duty to render assistance to any person found at sea in danger of being lost. Now, that applies to all ships, whether military ships or rescue vessels or even merchant ships. You know, like if they come across someone and they're able to effectively rescue them without causing serious danger to the ship, crew, or the passengers, then they're under a duty to rescue that person. And so that is where the duty comes from. It's expressly said in law.
So, and that's not the RNLI that have set that. They've not.
No,
the
that's
fact
the United Nations.
They agree to be the fact that as soon as that boat is launched, the captain of the lifeboat is now legally obliged to offer assistance. I've heard that before, actually, about offering assistance at sea, maybe on a film or something, but it's the kind of thing that you see in any TV series or Baywatch, the film, which is actually quite good fun. So if there's like an accident, every ship just tries to help, don't they? Because it's so dangerous at sea.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and it's like I say, it's a convention and a code of practice that's gone back centuries.
Yeah.
And so it's nothing new. So Dole was involved with sort of like seafaring life. They're aware of this. You know what I mean? It's sort of bred into them. So it's not suddenly had this thrust upon them in the 1980s. Well, I'm going to rescue people that are drowning. What's all that about? This is bullshit. I'm not into it for that. So it's nothing new. And what's interesting, but I think what the arguments were is in relation to, so as I understand it, all of these right-wing nutjobs wouldn't have an issue with decent British folk being rescued by the RNLI. They've got into, regardless of how they've got into trouble, even if they're drunk or whatever and they've fallen in the sea, it doesn't really matter because they can rescue. What they don't want is rescuing migrants. So they were going to suggest that that maybe this then the practicalities of that are ridiculous, aren't they? What you're going to have a look at someone and based on their racial profile decide that they're not British and therefore leave them to drown. That's not ignoring the absolute lack of humanity in that stance. You know what I mean? It's not really practical for a ship's captain to do that. No. And also it would be against the law anyway, because there is, if you'll know there, that every state shall require the master of a ship flying its flag to render assistance. So it doesn't say to render assistance of other members of that state or of other, it's silent as to who that's for. There are further conventions. So there's the convention.
So what's the law called again? So hold on one sec. Hold on.
Convention of the Law of the Sea. So the UN Convention of the Law of the Sea.
Now, after post-Brexit, are we still bound by this?
Yes. Nothing to do with the EU,
Right, so it's the United Nations. Doesn't matter at all. 1982 war, so there's no way around it that way. Right, so...
No.
Fine, right, so that's point... What was the number? Was it 89, or have I dreamt that? Was it section 89 or something? Or
Article 98.
98, oh God, back to front numbers. So, right, so what's the next... What's point 2?
So the next part is, hold on, let me just turn on to another window there. So there's the Safety of Life at Sea Convention as well, basically. Right. And there was an amendment to that, amendment to Chapter 5 of that in 2006, which added the word, this obligation to provide assistance applies regardless of the nationality or status of such persons or the circumstances in which they are found.
Right.
So it's quite clear that it's meant to, and I mean, that was amended in 2006, and it, I think possibly they'd foreseen, or maybe I can imagine this was an issue then as well, of some places, some people arguing that they shouldn't pick up people.
And not just Britain, because all over Europe they've been having similar kind of arguments and similar problems
the
with...
The EU's stance on immigration or on migrants at sea is appalling. It's the same as the Tories over here, you know what I mean, or of the sort of people like Farage, to be honest with you. Simply because they've experienced it earlier in the process because of where they are geographically. So obviously there's been much more immigration from North Africa into
Spain, right,
Spain,
just north,
Italy,
isn't it?
Greece, in so much that, because that's just geographically where it is. You're going across the Mediterranean from Africa to Europe. So, and I know that. So there is also an obligation under the Search and Rescue Convention as well, which basically places an obligation on states to actually provide for search and rescue vessels around in their territorial waters. Which they are in a lie. I mean, they're a charity, but they are, which I find bizarre that on an island we have it's a charity that runs that sort of thing.
They'd have everything would be run by charity if the government could get away with it.
Oh yeah, exactly.
If they could make the NHS fully a charity, that would be the dream. They could concentrate on siphoning off that cash instead of having to occasionally spend it on things they don't want, like health and education and police. Imagine a charity police force. Oh, God. That'd be bad. Anyway.
Yeah, exactly. So not only is there an obligation on ships' masters to provide assistance, an obligation on states to provide for specific vessels to, help search and rescue operations. But this is the main thing. Well, I think where there's been some problems, or definitely, well, I know where there's been some problems in Europe has been because once the captain of a ship has rescued people in the sea, they then have an obligation to deliver that person to a place of safety.
Yeah.
Now, a place of safety isn't just the next piece of land they can ditch them at, because that might not necessarily be safe. And it's also not the case that they can just take them back to where they came from, which is what's suggested in lots of lots of the press, that you just take them back there. I mean, for one thing, the RNLI are going to pick people up within the territorial waters of the UK and then ferry them across the channel back to France.
26 miles or something, as opposed to turning round and going back a mile or whatever, half a mile.
Exactly. So the Search and Rescue Convention, though, it encourages cooperation between states as to sort of accepting people once they've been rescued by, because the ship's captain might be from anywhere. If it's in international shipping lanes or so on, then that could be a captain from the other side of the world who's bringing involved in sort of if he's like a sea merchant or whatever. Then that could be. He wouldn't take them back to his home port. He would have to take them realistically. In theory, how it should work is that all states should accept people and deal with them sort of compassionately and in a way that's safe, so that a captain of a ship can deliver them to the next safe port, which isn't too far out of his route, therefore costing him money and so on. And it also may be that on the boat, the ship that picks him up doesn't have enough berths for everyone, and there's not enough food because they operate basically at bare minimum, as far as I can work out from having watched like Michael Palin go around the world. And and that's the idea. But what happens is that quite a few nation states ignore their legal obligations to accept people. Now that's the issue quite often. So I don't think there's much of an issue really with boats. Like most people would pick up someone who was drowning at sea. You know what I mean? I don't think that individual people would just go past them and go, oh, he looks like he's an economic migrant, so I'm going to leave him to drown. Because people don't operate like most people are all right, really. Regardless of what sort of it seems like sometimes. But where there has been an issue is, for example, I know Italy had a ruling against them in about 3 or 4 years ago, because they refused to accept a boatload of, I think it was a Norwegian boat that had picked up 400 migrants who were drowning, or they're on a craft where it was fairly inevitable that they may well drown in the Med. And Italy refused to accept them, basically, and refused to process them, or to allow the ship to dock. Ultimately, the ship's captain, fair play to him, just said, well, I'm docking anyway, and found somewhere that would accept it, and offloaded the people there, and they were able to then, be put in a camp or whatever it is. I'm not quite sure what happened to them at that point. But it's clear, Italy have got quite a right-wing government at the minute, and they just sort of said, no, we're not having you. We don't care what our legal obligations are under this convention. So it's whether or not it has teeth, because I know they were ruled against, and ultimately there will be, in essence, potentially fines or whatever, or a declaration that they've breached someone's human rights. But governments, the sovereign nations, can effectively do what they want. You know what I mean? Like, what are you going to do about it? Nothing. So there is a concern there. But how it should work is it should be that the RNLI pick up someone, and I think it does work in this country reasonably well, to be fair. So they'll pick someone up, they'll take them back to their home ports, probably, because they operate in a geographical area, and those people will be effectively, and their safety is ensured before they passed over to the police or the border patrol people to effectively process them. And this is where we have the issue of if someone's claiming asylum, as we've said before, at the point that they say, I am seeking asylum in your country, they are an asylum seeker. There's no such thing as an illegal asylum seeker, as I said before. It doesn't matter how you enter the country, you're entitled to claim asylum in that country, as long as you've not sought asylum previously in another EU member state. But we're no longer a member state anymore ourselves, so actually none of that matters. If someone claims asylum in our country, they're entitled to do so, and they have to be treated as an asylum seeker, not as an illegal immigrant as such, and set up for deportation. Now, what I've found interesting about looking through all this is that what if a ship's captain failed to pick up someone who was clearly in distress at sea? What would happen there? So, say the RNLI did this thing of they check someone's passport or checks, that person's foreign. He's clearly trying to get into this country and steal our jobs.
Yeah, he's got a string of onions around his neck. He's wearing a striped t-shirt and a beret. He's not English.
He's clearly come across from France, that guy.
Yeah.
So he's like his baguette under his arms, keeping him afloat.
He's doing mime and eating cheese and having an affair. What else did he do? So he's shrugging his shoulders instead of rowing.
You need some Dunkirk spirit, you. So that's exactly
what you need.
I'm coming across from France on a dinghy. Isn't that the thing? The most British thing you can do.
Yeah.
But it's like, I'm wondering whether it could be. I've not been able to find any case law around this, but whether it could potentially be gross negligence manslaughter if someone were to drown, having been effectively ignored by a rescue craft. If you look at there's a duty of care there. Clearly, there's an express statutory duty to assist someone, and lots of the elements of the offence will be made out, basically. Once you've established that duty of care, given the circumstances that duty has arisen, of someone basically being in distress at sea, and that's the basis of the duty, it's fairly foreseeable that if you don't act on that, then that person there's a serious risk of them dying. If they then die, then it's fairly obvious, that your failure to do that could amount to gross negligence, I would say. So, there's a risk there of that. So I've not been able to find any case law on that point, probably because people in reality don't do it. They would assist someone who's clearly in trouble at sea.
There must be largely, not talking about pirates and the like, and there's obviously bad people, but there must be a sort of common, this is what you do as a sea person. It must be drummed into you, because it's also your support network as well. If you're the one that's going to be like risking your life going to sea and stuff, you go, oh my God, if we do get into trouble, because a million unforeseen things could happen out at sea, and you put a mayday call out, you want whoever's close to come and get you, because as you'd come and get them. And I think I would wonder if, I'm not talking about people who commercially fish and like argue all the time with Spanish fishermen or French fishermen or something in the channel, but if you're the captain of like some sort, I don't even know what I'm talking about, but you would think there's more camaraderie between a sea captain from France and one from Portugal than there is between two French people, one of whom's a sea captain and one of whom works in a bank. Do you know what I mean? Because you're the same. That's what that would be my guess. It's a guess. I don't even know why I said it, because it's added nothing as ever.
No, but I think you're right though. I think it's drum. I can't imagine if you've effectively become a sea captain, or
your life's the sea, isn't it? It's more than a job. It's a lifestyle, and you go to work every day or every other day, whenever you go, and you're risking your life, and all. That other people doing the same job are in the same boat, so to speak. So there's got to be a camaraderie there. There's got to be respect, and you would just help people. It's probably one of the first things you learn when you go to sea.
I also think it's like human. It's just like a human response as well. Like, I don't see how if you were in a position to help someone drown, I don't see how you would be able to not do that.
Especially not off Britain, because you it's not like you're in the Dead Sea or something, and firstly people float because it's like really buoyant. It's such a buoyant sea, and it's like 30 degrees. It's very pleasant, It's nice. It's going to be freezing. People are going to go into shock and drown really quickly if they go overboard, aren't they?
Yeah, exactly.
So.
Precisely. And I've read testimony from like volunteer RNLI crew members and volunteers about their experience of finding sort of these people who were quite desperate. And the first thing that they all say is that the first thing you notice is how desperate these people are. They not in any way coming up. But and it shouldn't matter if someone's drowning at sea. You just pull them, you just take them out.
No, exactly.
You can do. And so the likes of I don't know. I just despair at the it's clearly there's no legal basis for any of these arguments that
right,
even
as
if
ever.
it creates exactly, even if it creates like a pull factor for people to get on these boats and come across, it doesn't matter. You know what I mean? Like it no rational person or decent person is going to go, I think I might leave that child to drown so that can set a lesson for other people and therefore undermine people's... You know what I mean? It's just nonsense that people would think that. But I do worry that it's just because people come out with these things. It's just pure theatre to play to their gallery, and like you have rare blokes in the pub going, "Just shoots them all, mate."
Yeah.
It's just meant for that. But I think in reality, no one actually would do that. You know what I mean? Like if push came to shove, and you found yourself in a position where you could rescue someone from drowning, I think you would do it. I don't see how anyone wouldn't do that. So,
no, well, especially not people whose whole life is volunteering at sea to save lives. When
like, you're going to walk along going, I'm going to save you, not you, but it's just, it's not, it's but like Jesus just, sort of selectively not curing some people of leprosy or whatever.
Well, to be honest, Jesus could sort of trot along the sea. He wouldn't have to be in a boat. He could just walk out and do a bit of magic. And
can you imagine how much crap he'd get, Jesus, if he was out for his virtue signaling and his magic tricks and stuff like that.
Also, they'd be like, Jesus makeover, and he'd like, lose the white robe, Jesus, get rid of those sandals, trim that beard. Although he was like black, wasn't he? So I think all the images we've got of him from like classical Renaissance art are. Yeah. Because I keep seeing loads of things like there's loads of times where Jesus' hair is described as, I think he's supposed to be Ethiopian or something like that kind of. Is it Nubian? Yeah. He's supposed to be that appearance, isn't he? Because his hair's described as being very dark and like wool. And he's very dark skinned. You know what I mean? The Bible specifically tells you what he looks like. But we don't want to wear that.
Artist went, no, I think he had long, fair hair, actually.
Yes, blue eyes, definitely. Is he King of the Jews? Is he No. He won't be dark or swarthy in any way.
That's a job for an Englishman, Look, all his friends were called Peter, Mark, John. Clearly, these weren't from that area.
Okay,
they just got lost at sea and washed up on the shore.
Last Supper at Wetherspoons. Can you imagine? Everybody's ordering on the app and paying individually.
Yeah. Went on curry night.
Yeah, Thursday. I think Thursday's curry night. It's good. I like Wetherspoons food, but you're not.
Judas would be the one, wouldn't he? I think we should all club in and pay together. It's like, no, Judas, you had a fillet steak and 8 pints. So.
I hate those twats. I absolutely hate those people that do that. I've known a few. Like, so it's under.
Just split the bill equally 10 ways.
It's 40 quid each.
50% of it.
Yeah. Yeah, I went on a meal in Cyprus once. Like, you had to go for meals after the gig. It was very pleasant and stuff. But this couple had been there 2 hours before us. They'd already had they were on the second bottle of wine. They'd had some sort of cocktail to start. They'd had a starter. Main course was exactly what you said: 2 fillet steaks. And I was like, I just have 1 beer, and I think I'll probably just have, I don't know, I'd have had chop and chips or something like that. Moussaka probably. And then the bill came. They're like, should we get some limoncello? And I'm like, I hate it. I absolutely hate that kind of drink. Anyway, the bill came and it was €120. And they're like, right, that's, it's just €30 each. And me and the other lad were like, you can fuck off. We've deliberately, because we knew you've been like this before, we've just gone, right, we'll have something pretty cheap and 1 beer, because I don't want a beer anyway. And it was like, well, ours is €15 each. So you pay the 90. And the faces on them was like, it's just not what we do. It's not what we do in like where the country we're from. And it's like, you twats. Absolute bastards. Anyway. I know. And do you know who I think the other person was on that meal? Was Longley, who doesn't drink. Dave Longley.
Right. Okay.
So he doesn't drink anyway, and so he'd have had he wouldn't have even had a Coke. He didn't like that. He'd have had a water probably, and then no carbs, just protein because he's a bodybuilder. So it was funny. It was really funny. Anyway.
I can't imagine that he's also not shy about telling people what he thinks either, is he?
He argued constantly with them on a daily basis. The thing is as well, because he's sober and he's arguing with drunk people and he's super intelligent anyway, he was always right. Because he wouldn't argue if he wasn't right, but it was just hilarious watching him just each argument just going, no, that's not true, that's not true, that's not true, and it was fun. It was kind of good fun. It was a good fun week in Cyprus. So, are there more points?
No, they were the main ones.
Very clear, isn't it?
It's very obvious. Yeah. It's not particularly tricky, to be honest with you. It could get sort of a bit murky if you look at what the consequences of failing to comply with it would be. But as I say, it's very obvious, and I think that as we both said, it goes beyond just the law. People aren't just doing this because there's a legal obligation to do it. People do it because it's what you do. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So, well, it's what the RNLI do.
People aren't going to volunteer to save lives selectively, are they?
No. It's like the RSPCA turn up to there's a dog in a yard, it's running loose and it's not being fed. And they just turn up and they're like, hang on, this is a white dog. We only save black or tan dogs.
Yeah, what is that? A Pomeranian? Well, balls to it. I'm not saving one of them. Carry on.
Foreign dog.
That dog.
Yeah, it's just bullshit, isn't it? So, anyway.
Exactly.
Right, great. That was great.
More bullshit from the right wing is what
and
it is.
And the thing that baffles me every single time is they've got advisors and they'll have people who could do research for them.
And they're not bothered about being right, though, are they?
No, it's just a sheer.
Being far right.
Yeah, as long as it's like a willful, not even just a disregard. It's a distorting or just ignoring the facts.
Yeah.
Because you could say, why are they doing that? Why should they do that? And then your next thought, actually, do they have to do that by law? Yeah, they do. Oh well, that's my question answered. Then I better not make this ridiculous point.
Yeah, I'm gonna. Yeah,
I look pretty stupid of us. It's fucking idiots. Anyway, right. So we'll be back in a week or so with another episode, and that's it, really, isn't it? There's no further announcements at this stage.
No. Oh, you like that? It was like a little teaser he did there. There's no further announcements at this stage.
Okay, if you've got this far, we're planning a relaunch because. We've been planning it for weeks, and we need to get back to doing it together, don't we? And you've got a little bit more time off now, so we can stop doing it on the phone. And we think we'll do a full rebrand, relaunch, everything, and just look at it and be a bit more professional about it. And effectively start again because we've got amazing numbers for the series 1 or halfway through, and we've dwindled. We've basically pissed off anyone that doesn't know us, and rightly so. So we're going to try again. We're going to just start again, I think, and do what we originally set out to do, aren't we? We think.
Yeah. What we should do is properly do like a proper relaunch. You know, like Bowie or whatever. We should go to Berlin or something.
Oh my God!
And like cutting edge podcast stuff. You know.
Yes.
That'd be cool, wouldn't it?
Yeah, we should totally rebirth. We should come back as like Ziggy Stardust.
Yeah.
The lawyers from Mars. that would work. Right. So anyway, stay tuned because as ever we're planning on it, but we've also been planning on it for a couple of months and we've done fuck all yet. So don't hold your breath. Which is also good advice if you're trapped in a dinghy in the middle of the Mediterranean. Exactly. Keep breathing. Right. Bye, everybody.
Okay.